Howdy, sir.
Hello, my friend. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. What's happening?
It's a beautiful day. Well, actually, it's a rough day in the neighborhood. They've got a shitload of fires. So, I just want to do, Owen and I are going to do a shout out to the firefighters. Thank you guys for working so hard in this awful weather.
Yeah, for real.
It's heat on top of heat. So, thank you guys, and we wish you the best. Mm-hmm. Other than that, my own personal life, I'm on vacation right now. It's been wonderful.
Excellent.
Yeah. Got some training in every day. Catching up on reading, cleaned my house. So I feel pretty good. Feeling pretty good. Yeah. Should we do our roll call?
Absolutely.
All right. My name is Randel Davis of Red Forest Chinese Boxing. I teach Wing Chun, and you can find me on Facebook, YouTube, and all the other avenues of social media. How about yourself, sir?
My name's Owen Schilling, and I teach at Boulder Internal Arts here in Boulder, Colorado. You can find me at all of the same.
All of the socials. Our group is Kung Fu Conversations. You can find us at KF Conversations on Instagram, Kung Fu Conversations at gmail.com on YouTube. We have a beautiful Fourth Wall account where you can pick up some great t-shirts.
Yeah, there's some good stuff.
And posters and help support the show. You can also help the show at Buy Me a Coffee. That is Kung Fu Con Pod. That is Kung Fu Con Pod. And we look forward to saying hello. Like, again, we're on Instagram for Kung Fu Conversations. We're on Facebook and anywhere out there. And reach out, say hello. Maybe give us a topic suggestion. Look back through our old catalog and library. And we've got great interviews ahead that we're releasing.
Yeah, we're really excited about those. I was just going to mention that, if you are outside the United States and you don't have access to a podcast platform like Apple or Spotify or any of that stuff, we do always post our interviews and our conversations between Randall and I on YouTube. So most places can get YouTube. And it's becoming a pretty popular way for people to check out the podcast.
Oh, also, I'm doing some kind of solo podcasts. So Mr. Schilling is maybe one of the only people on the planet that's 10 times busier than I am. And it's not that we're changing the format of the show. We're always going to have, chitter chats between me and Owen, which we absolutely love. And then him and I are going to interview some world-class people. But I'm also going to be on different platforms. I got to talk to Jack Gillum, the gentleman who invented the Wave Chi Club for Indian club swinging. So that is an Instagram exclusive. And it's a little splotchy, there's technical difficulties, but I did my first live stream with Kung Fu Conversations, and my friend Matthew Apsikardu, who is a high-level Okinawan karate, as well as Japanese martial arts and practitioner. And you can go over to YouTube and listen to that live stream. We had some great conversation, and you can find ways to connect with Matthew Apsikardu and his publishing company and check out his book. He's got some amazing stuff that he's doing. So keep on the lookout for some of my little solo casts with some interesting people down the road.
Absolutely. So what are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today?
Oh, boy. This is another our more controversial topic.
Controversial. Sometimes too much information is not a good thing.
That's right.
It's a huge topic. I'm actually having to deal with this right now. When I first started off teaching Wing Chun, I've basically gone through 7 models on how to introduce it. And you have been a great influence on my teaching, as well as Sifu Mayer and a few other teachers that I think are, high level and world class. And I might not train with those people, but I'm not looking to add on their applications or their systems, but I'm looking at how folks treat their student, share information with the student, and what their teaching model is. That's what I'm really looking for on different coaches. And so right now, I've got someone that was used to a model where I would dump info, where I would info dump, right? But the problem with that is they weren't training it on their own. So now I've got a much slower model that I do. If you can't get the, ruffle punch, drum punch, or whatever you want to call it, the Lin Wan Kyun, if you can't get that right, if you can't see how that connects to the posture, if you can't see how that connects to the different stances that we use, and if you can't see what it does as far as creating kind of that daisy chain effect of like a push-pull model or leaving the hands out there are certain criteria that I have to have and I have to see with the ruffle punch. And if you can't get that basic thing, then all the other theory and concepts have nothing to stand on. You've also got to get the Yiji Kemyanma, or the goat catching stance. You've got to get that. You have to relax in the hips. You have to elongate the spine. You have to tuck the chin. There are these little things that you have to do as a basic rookie student. Because all of a sudden concepts like bridging, balance, speed, distance, timing, all of that goes out the window if you are not participating in the practice of the training, of the doing of the thing. Because I'm really starting to understand that, it's only taken me 26 years to figure this out, that the mind has to live inside the body. And if your body hasn't trained the work, then the theory is it's a non sequitur almost.
Yeah, for sure. You don't have any place to apply it. Yeah, I think that this idea of more information, at least for me initially, was born out of the fact that, like, in the pre-internet days, getting information of any kind was a real pain.
Absolutely.
I for sure have talked about that here on the podcast before, but yeah, it was just like you're kind of limited to magazines and some VHS tapes if you were lucky, and maybe if you were super lucky, you had a good teacher who could help sort of clarify and explain things. But even the having of a good teacher, in my experience, you still need to, and I sort of jokingly refer to this as triangulating the art. I think you need at least 3 sources on the same material or in the same system
100%.
to really begin to get perspective on it. Having your teacher's perspective is super important, and I think that's primary. And you definitely have to do your time, like you were saying. If you have a bunch of theory, but you're not putting in the work to discover what that means in your body, and with another person with resistance, it's going to be that much more difficult to realize what the information is actually trying to say. In my experience, that there's in any given piece of information that I have from whoever, there'll be multiple layers buried in that information.
Oh yeah.
Meaning that I sort of have to go on a mission of discovery to really begin to understand how different things are impacting the body, and whether that's a hand shape, or whether that's a stance, or whether that's an application even. So it's like, oh, I can take this application, and how does that work? How does it work here, and how does it work there, and how does it work if I'm left side forward, right side forward? Because all of those applications can all be done that way. Now, sometimes in the physical understanding or unpacking of a concept, it may be kind of difficult to, take a technique and then apply it right side forward, left side forward, so on and so forth. That may be challenging because maybe the technique itself, it doesn't lend itself to doing it well on one side. And that's a good thing to understand too. What's the limitation of the technique? And maybe I shouldn't use that in this position, I also think that now these days we're inundated with information. So it's like,
yes.
I can go out and look at like every type of Bagua out there. And, I can look at like half a dozen practitioners from any given system now. So now the problem becomes, how do I know who's good? How do I know who's got good stuff? I think that kind of becomes a qualitative. In the beginning, like way back when pre-internet, it was a quantitative issue. Like I just didn't have enough information to be informed. Or I didn't have enough places to have a perspective. I didn't have enough sources of information to give me a perspective on a particular topic or style or technique or whatever. And now it's a qualitative issue because there's so much shit out there. You got people out there who've been doing this stuff for 5 minutes, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to take it and put it on the internet. I mean, I see these guys on Instagram all the time, and I just, you just look at it and you're like, yeah, it's like kind of like you were saying, man, it's like you got to go do your homework before you get out there.
And it's interesting too, because I think another topic in the middle of this, and I can't remember if we've done this idea before, but I think sometimes more stuff is different than the information, because I'm still you still pick on me with Xingyi and Bagua, and you're like, okay, well, you've got this layer. But now there's a whole other layer to the same material that you already have. Mm-hmm. And when you add on that new layer to the material, there is a whole different way of looking at it mentally, of trying to grasp the physical quality that is the next layer of that same material. Whereas if I'm someone in a system that's like, okay, we've got 85 forms.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about Russ Smith when you were saying that.
Oh, yeah. But,
Russ was talking about that.
Yeah, Russ definitely was talking about that, the layering process. Actually, Ryan Bloomfeld talks about that too. He's like, you're going to learn the same thing 5 or 10 different ways. And each time you learn that same thing, it's going to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and so it will change. You physically will change. You mentally will change with the same material that you've had in the past. But I also think too that, it was funny because, Matthew and I were talking about this the other day in his Okinawan karate. He's like, I've got some systems out there that have 50 kata that are 30 to 40 moves each. He's like, what I'm trying to do as a new teacher is find, what is a chain? What is a daisy chain that links all these 50 kata? And he's like, well, I've kind of boiled it down to these 5. You got to have these 5. And then he starts breaking it down more and more, making it digestible pieces for the student. It's like, okay, well, these stances, you have to have these stances to do this system. You have to have this power generation method to do this system. It was really cool talking to him because it very much sounded like a Chinese good recipe of training. And then, I think too, sometimes it's like, well, maybe it's not just a Japanese or a Chinese or an Okinawan thing. Maybe we can break it down into these models that are digestible and graspable. But, I also work with people that have 85 kata that are 30 or 40 moves each, and there is no chain. There is no connection. It's like, well, this is this over here, that's that over here, that's this over here. Well, what makes those lumpings or those groups or those categories? What makes this over here, Fanza, Quan? What makes this over here, Tongbei? What makes this over here, Baji? What makes this over here, the Shaolin Xingyi? I can't think of the name of that one. That one has a name too. It's like, well, the forms do. And that's not enough, and so I think sometimes too, people freak out when they have a small system like Wing Chun, when they have a small system like Xingyi. I mean, yeah, the variables of how to train it, that's when you find all the, the minutia of forms. But if it's a 5-element system, it better go back to the 5 elements. You better have a direct path back to those. Or if it's the animals, there's certain qualities mentally, physically, characteristically that you're looking for. And there's layers to those. And sometimes those smaller systems of, well, we've only got, 17 kata. We've got the 12 animals, so we've got the 5 elements. And then everything else is a permutation or a mutation of that. And they're tiny kata. And some people, talu. Some people don't like that. They want the 85 talu forms, that are 40 to 70 moves each.
Oh, yeah.
And that never appealed to me. And I think that that's more information. Or excuse me, that's more stuff than it is actually information.
Right. That's very well said. Yeah. And in a way that, some people equate the sort of like more is better. Oh, well, we have this and we have that and we have this and we have that and we have this and I can do that and we have this. And and then it becomes a bit of a dick measuring contest in that way. So whenever you mention a concept or whenever you mention a technique, they're like, oh, well, we have that. Oh yeah, well, we have that. Well, we have that. It's like, okay, that's not really what I'm here for. That's not really the point behind the conversation, right? So then it becomes, it's like, once again, we can break it down to that. Like, it's like quantity versus quality. Because, the human body, there is a finite amount of ways that it can actually move. So there's going to be a qualitative piece, right? So in the Gao system, we have 64 Hotian. Now, it's funny, a long time ago, I read a book by Douglas Weil, and it was on the Yang-style Tai Chi classics, and he had translated them. And I think it was in that book, and somewhere in there, he had talked about, these numerical patterns that reoccur in the Chinese society and Chinese culture that are sort of numerically satisfying.
too. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I always liked that, because it's like when I hear or I see, these 64 techniques in the Gauss system, the straight line sets, it's like, okay, did you really need all 64 of those? There's at least in our set in the Yitzhak system, there's a fair amount of repetition. And I mean, I understand that each one's trying to get at a different concept or a different idea, but I really think we could have broke it down a little bit more. And if you go back before Gao and the guy he learned it from, that guy only had like 32 pieces, right? And then if you go back to like Chung Ching Hua, his teacher, then all of a sudden it's like, I know that Chung Ching Hua and those guys had developed some straight line pieces, but they didn't need 64 of them. I mean, it's more of a quantitative thing at that point. Like you could just teach each of the techniques from the 64 Hotian as, just like a standalone piece, or you could just teach it in like kind of a technical manner. Like this is how you use it. This is how you train it.
But is it Bagua?
Well, yeah, because the body method's the same. The power generation's the same. So therefore it would be Bagua, but it wouldn't be necessarily, you wouldn't have to have a form that goes with it. And then, Gao, and I don't know what he was thinking. Maybe I do know what he was thinking, but I was thinking he was getting older and he wanted to make some money.
Hey.
And he created like these 2-man sets for each one of the Hotian. So then not only do you have 64 pieces, but then you have these little 64 short form 2-man sets. And we don't have those in the Yitzhak system, but I know that they have those in the Tangent system. And it's, it's like,
how much is too much?
Yeah, exactly. It's now we're back to this quantitative thing. It's just like, okay, I understand that, you can encapsulate a lot of information in a 2-man set and that it's a good training device, but how much is too much?
Is that why we have to try to, as teachers and as students, to physically train the principle? Because principles can be far less than, there's a section, my Sifu Mayer in Wing Chun has a book, the Bai Sao book. It's demonstration hands. And there's a little section in there that he shows quantitatively how many permutations from this one drill you can get. And it's some god-awful number. There's something like 35,000 or 38,000 permutations that you can get from this small model of drill. But that's why he says that's why principle-based training and learning is so important. Because inside those principles is the DNA for all those permutations. Right. And that's why, a good stacked, layered, principle-based system has so many permutations inside of it. I wanted to go back to something that you were saying on the dick measuring contest. And, people, I've gotten to a point now, at least with the Wing Chun stuff, that I'll hear, and it's not calling anybody out, but it's like, okay, well, and here it is you were talking about, we have that in our system. We have that in our system. We have that in our system. Like, okay, but how does it integrate into the system? How do you trace it into Chisao? How do you take that theory or that concept or that principle, and where is it in the stance? Where is it in the forms? Where is it in your drills? Where is it? You show me where it is, because I need a little more than, we've got that. Do you have it? Because having it as, a base layer understanding of information is, okay, here's this principle, here's the theory. But how do you relate it back to your work?
Sure.
And I think that is something that you really have to take the time, especially if you want to teach this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And I think that too, as a teacher, especially going back to where I was starting with in this whole story, is I used to just throw tons of information at my students. Well, they couldn't grasp it because they weren't doing the work. And the work and the drills and the training is the foundation that holds up the theory to make it applicable.
100%. Yeah. And I would piggyback on that by saying that, one of the things that I really appreciate about the Yitzhak system is it's sort of, it's more of a principle based approach to Bagua, which makes it more difficult. I think the barrier to entry is more difficult that way, but it requires more of a thinking approach. You have to engage the material. You have to actually get to the point, and I think this goes back to what you were saying. You have to really embody those principles. You have to embody those pieces. So instead of, having to memorize 35,000 techniques, like you were saying before, just with this idea, you can just embody the principle and practice the principle and understand on a physical how it manifests in your body, how it manifests with a partner, how you can think about it and teach it. And then you don't need to learn all 35,000 techniques because, you have a core of maybe, 20. And out of that core, those are where all the permutations come from. And that's really the way like it works in the Yitong system. It's like, okay, yeah, I understand the core gene behind each of those 64 palms, and therefore it makes it when it comes to like applying it or talking about it. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. I know how to apply it from the outside. I know how to apply it from the inside. I know how to apply it to different ranges. I know how to apply it to different levels. And that's really where the magic is, in my opinion, where a lot of people are much more sort of technique based. And so therefore you have to have this like lexicon of individual techniques, and you don't understand, like you were saying, how those techniques fit together. How do they go back to the initial forms? How do they plug into the theory? How do you extrapolate all these pieces and talk about them?